Hi guys, thanks for watching This Old Thing. I'm Jessie Sage, and today we're going to do a reading from this book, The Girl in the Centerfold by Surrey Marshe, or Marshe, I'm not sure how you say it. This is a Playboy book, so a quick intro about why I wanted to read this book, because there's been a resurgence in interest in the Playboy world since The Secrets of Playboy came out on A&E. It really kind of just released a lot of secrets, literally, that people didn't know about Playboy and about like the horrors of sort of being in that. So there's been a lot of renewed interest in it. And I myself have become obsessed with it and reading and watching everything about it. And also not just the horrors, but also in The Girls Next Door, which is sort of like a comfort show that's about the good side of Playboy and the fun times that they had. So I found this book, The Girl in the Centerfold, at a book thrift store, and I started reading it. And I also got at the same time as this Holly Madison's book, Down the Rabbit Hole, which, for those of you that don't know, when that came out around 2014 or something, it really was a bombshell because people just hadn't heard that Playboy was as bad as Holly wrote about in her book, and that Hugh Hefner was as bad as he had written, or as she had written about in her book. And the reason for that is because Playboy was so powerful during its time that they controlled people getting their books published. They would just do a lot of shady and underhanded things to stop anything bad from being published about them. And they go more into that in The Secrets of Playboy. So I was fascinated when I found that this book had come out in 1969 is the copyright, and that it doesn't just speak highly of Playboy. This isn't a like Playboy propaganda piece, and it really, really validates a lot of things that the girls from the 2000s have been saying about their experiences, and which a lot of people have even tried to ruin their lives over exposing this situation, because a lot of people were just so invested in Playboy being this perfect thing and people who are making money off of it and all this. And for example, when Holly Madison's book came out, tons of people tried to discredit her, and even to this day there's kind of like a Holly hate train that people are on because of how she burst that bubble. And so as I was reading this, I actually haven't finished it myself, but I've read through maybe about halfway through. I was just so interested to find out how many things were backed up from a book that was like 40 years before the girls from the 2000s had that experience. So the reason that I want to read it to you guys is because it's more of a rare book, and I've never even seen this mentioned in Playboy discussions. And a lot of those books that are about Playboy are now being reread and re-examined. And I just thought this is an incredible one because it's from 1969, so it's really from like one of the heights of Playboy. So that's why I want to read it. And yeah. So I hope that you guys will enjoy. So let's get into it. The wraps are off as one of Playboy's sexiest playmates tells her very intimate story. The Girl in the Centerfold by Surrey Marshe. I guess I'm just Marshe? I don't know. As Surrey Marshe, I was photographed in the nude for millions of Playboy readers. A lot of people would call that shocking. I don't, not in comparison with the rest of my story. She was a beautiful and virginal 18-year-old girl who came to America seeking fame, fortune, and romance. What she found was something else. Now 3 years older and many men wiser, she has written a startlingly frank account of her fall and rise in the empire of supersex. Quote, a candid confessional, going overboard on a few sex scenes, a tale of shocking admissions and intimate inside revelations about the life of a Playboy Club bunny who suddenly found herself chosen to be the girl in the centerfold. Her impressions of Hugh Hefner and his coterie at the Chicago Pleasure Palace are full of surprises. She seemed sincerely moved to get the whole story off her chest, end quote. And that was from Publishers Weekly. So yes, she was the Playmate of the Month for, I don't know what month, for 1967, I believe it was. I'm just gonna read, there's like an intro, there's kind of like a little blurb. I'm just gonna read it all because I feel like all the text surrounding it is really interesting, the way that they present it. Because the way they presented it, I feel like even had to do with how she kind of got away with saying this stuff, because she didn't say it as like, this is an expose on Playboy. It's just kind of like, oh, this is my story. Don't pay attention, Hef. So, lovely Surrey Marshe gives you the whole picture. The picture, of course, is the glamorous total exposure offered to a lucky girl each month in the centerfold of Playboy. Millions of girls dream of becoming a Playmate, idol of half the men in America. Thousands actually seek the experience, but only a few can be chosen to enter the charmed rectangle. Surrey Marshe is one of those who made it all the way. Now Surrey tells with frankness and sincerity what she had to do to be chosen, what awaited her in Hugh Hefner's fabled Chicago mansion, and what was expected of her after she made the big scene. Her completely candid story takes you into swinging inner sanctums of the world of Playboy, its pals and playmates, and into the tangled emotions of a girl who decided to play along. The Girl in the Centerfold, the uninhibited memoirs of Miss January. Okay, so she was Miss January. And the inscription or the dedication says, to my mother and father, ... forgive me. Introduction. How'd you like to pose for the centerfold? Be a playmate. Those were the first words spoken to me when I entered the never-never-land of Playboy magazine, Playboy clubs, playmates, and Hugh Marston Hefner, editor, publisher, creator, and chief potentate of this mammarian empire. I mean the first words. They were uttered by Tony Roma, general manager of the Playboy Club in New York, where I had gone to apply for what I thought was a job as a waitress. He didn't say hello or good morning, or nice day, isn't it, which are the acceptable greetings in the usual social situations. Nor did he say, hi there, sweetie, or goodness gracious, you sure are something, or hot damn, I'd like to see you with your clothes off, which are greetings I've heard in some of the less usual social situations. In simplest terms, this is a book about what I said, absolutely not, and what he said, sit down, you don't have to leave. And the very interesting things that happened after that, and how I did become a playmate, and how I came to get writer's cramp autographing my posterior for posterity, and why it happened, and how come I wish it hadn't happened. A logical question, why bother? What is there about posing au naturel that warrants the time, trouble, and expense of writing a book? What could there possibly be about the process of discarding the fruit of the loom and saying cheese while a photographer clicks the shutter that requires 50,000 words for the telling of it? It is the genius of Hugh Hefner, together with the endless adolescence of the American male, that not only makes it possible to write 50,000 words about such a seemingly simple process, but virtually demands that it be written. Playboy's Playmate is not just a nude picture. It, and I use that gender deliberately, is a symbol, an image, an attitude. Playboy's Playmate is supposed to be the girl next door, or more accurately, the emancipated girl next door if you live in the right neighborhood, and no wonder real estate prices are so high. The 5 million or so men who buy Playboy every month know, of course, that the Playmate isn't really the girl next door. I don't have many girlfriends, and as a 2-year guest in America, I claim no expertise on local customs. But I gather that the prevailing attitude in this land of mom, apple pie, and popsicles is that girls remove their attire for 2 purposes, one of which is to take a bath. Girls just don't go around taking their clothes off and saying, look at me, ain't I gorgeous, and what did you say your name was? Another obvious fact is that men, all men, not just American men, would like to have it otherwise. Male curiosity about the female figure is apparently incurable. afflicting even married men, would-be rapists, and medical doctors, all of whom sent me love letters after my picture appeared in Playboy. It seems to me that when an American man shells out 75 cents, in parentheses, $1.25 in January, with an asterisk, and the asterisk says the price had recently gone up to $1 and $1.50. Inflation has hit skin too. Where was I? American man shells out 75 cents for Playboy and flips to the foldout of the Playmate. He is buying a balm for curiosity. He is also buying a fantasy, the lovely, bosomy girl who undresses just for him, and 4,999,999 forgotten others. Because she likes him, wants to please him, and will demand nothing, including proof of his masculinity. He can look and mentally touch, but nothing is required of him. It is the genius of Hugh Hefner that he built a publishing empire on the sale of curiosity, fantasy, and hope. Playboy has many imitators, all of which run nudes and foldouts. I know because I'm suing one of them for running an unauthorized epidermal spread on me. But the imitators fail, again because of the genius of Hefner. Playboy's Playmate is put on a pedestal. Because she is supposedly the girl next door, she has a name, address, family, career, and brains. She can cook, sew, be a perfect hostess, read tracts on Zen Buddhism, entertain on the guitar, and be the perfect companion. Kind, considerate, thoughtful, attractive, tender, sexy, and emancipated. Even dogs love her. She is supposedly special, the elite among the women of the world. Therefore, she is rare. Only 12 among the supposedly hundreds of applicants are selected each year. In 15 years of publication, only 180 have been honored by selection as a Playmate. So, one reason for writing this book is to give the 5 million readers of Playboy an honest, realistic look at one Playmate. There will be no image, no fantasy, no pretense. Believe me, men, I'm not the girl next door. I'm also writing for girls and for women who wish they were girls. It was women, not men, who talked me into becoming a Playmate. Oh, gee, aren't you the lucky one? Boy, if I had your figure, I'd do it in a second. You mean you don't want to be a Playmate? Are you nuts? I'd blow my mind to think you'll get in the movies. You'll go to Chicago and live in Hefner's house. All those dreamy men. You'll be famous. What the hell you got that I ain't? Women have two attitudes towards girls who pose as nature struck them. One attitude goes this way: you're sick. Having posed in the nude, I am therefore an empty-headed exhibitionist with nothing to offer but a body and an insatiable appetite for admiration of it. Needless to say, I'm a slut. The other attitude was expressed this way to me by a suburban housewife. To be a Playmate would be the living end, a complete gas. I'm not kidding, she really did talk that way. To have your picture run in a magazine and to have millions of men admire you and desire you, and to do it in safety so you don't have to be touched or hurt in any way, that would be the absolute end. I'd love it. Ladies, read on. It's never too late to learn. There is another reason for writing this book. Frankly, the reason doesn't do much to me, but I have a friend who is very big on it, so I'll mention it. My friend, a devotee of round, rolling pronouncement, says, when the social history of our times is written, Hugh Hefner and Playboy will have a role in it. I never was too big on social history, but my friend may have a point there. At the very least, Hefner's Playboy has helped make nudity this year's fashion news. See-through blouses are in, whether or not you have anything under to be seen. Perhaps I'm assuming too much knowledge on the part of the reader. Maybe there are readers unacquainted with Playboy. My parents would make at least two. Playboy is a monthly periodical of topical comment and fiction dedicated to the mammarian glorification of girlhood. Each issue contains a sizable number of significant, or should those adjectives be reversed, female breasts, or as the parlance goes, boobies. Playboy, in its 15 years of publication, has presented in elegant, four-color, airbrush splendor such famous boobies as those of Anita Ekberg, the late Jane Mansfield, the late Marilyn Monroe, Stella Stevens, Ursula Andress, Carol Lindley, Arlene Dahl, Marlena Dietrich, Mamie Van Doren, Kim Novak, Sophia Loren, not to mention June the Bosom Wilkinson. If your anatomy is uncelebrated, you become a playmate, which is alleged to afford proper recognition of your faculties. You are shown in full color on a 3-page fold-out adorned with staples. I was presented in what might be called a single-breasted profile with staples on my right armpit and hip. In 15 years of publication, there have been thousands and thousands of undraped bosoms and buttocks. There has been enough skin shown in Playboy in all those years to cover the earth, with enough left over to cover the Sherwin-Williams Paint Company, too. More than just displaying skin, Playboy has made it respectable. Playboy is no dirty book hidden under the counter. It is a major American publication, running over 200 pages at the minimum and filled with advertisements from the leading American corporations. Gentlemen, fellow directors, my message is a simple one. Skin sells. You better believe it. Playboy has influenced more than the attitudes toward nudity. It speaks for the sophisticated, urbane American male. It advises him on what to wear when, what and where to eat, how to act. It solves problems of the heart, or at least the gonads. She's so funny. And teaches him how to be emancipated and how to get an emancipated girl into bed. Hefner writes something called the Playboy philosophy, which is a discussion of a very old morality which is winning new acceptance. An important element of this morality is that sex is fun, sex is pure, sex is innocent, sex is right, and the last one in bed leaves the light on. The antonym for nude, according to Playboy, is prude, and clergymen buy subscriptions at half price. I've been part of all this. I've been a bunny in a Playboy club. Good afternoon, welcome to the Playboy Club. I've gone on Playboy promotions. I've been sent alone to a hotel room with 35 drunks. I've addressed a class at the Harvard Business School. I've been a playmate. I've been with the Playboy photographers. I've dated Playboy executives. I've lived for weeks in Hefner's mansion in Chicago. I've met a number of other playmates. Come on, honey, let's see what you look like. My friend thinks, because I've done all this, that I'm a part of social history and owe it to history to report my experiences so Hefner and Playboy can be properly evaluated by history. Well, maybe. The real reasons I'm writing this book are two very personal motives. To the left and above my exposed bosom were the words, Playboy's Playmate of the Month. What's a playmate? According to a leading dictionary, a playmate is a companion in games and recreation. Possibly, but having been a part of the Playboy empire, I can tell you that a rather loose construction has to be put on the meaning of games and recreation. We didn't play hopscotch. Playboy's playmate is something else. The last thing she is a companion. To me, a companion connotes equality, a mutual sharing. Playboy's playmate is not a sharer, she's a giver. She's a thing, hardly a girl or a person, who willingly takes off her clothes and displays her body for the satisfaction and satiation of boys, 8 to 80. A picture of a girl with her clothes removed can serve two purposes to a man: satisfy curiosity and be a masturbatory fantasy. I'll admit I didn't realize that when I agreed to be a playmate. I thought I was... oh, never mind what I thought. A playmate doesn't have a mind or a soul. I don't know what to call her but a thing to be ogled, lusted over, and, let's face it, jacked off over. She's not a wife and mother, although many playmates have been. She's not even sexy. She has no private parts, thanks to the post office department. She's all buttocks and bosom. She's a girl who has announced to the world that she's available, easy, and please leave the light on because I'm gorgeous. I want you to admire me and find pleasure in me, and don't worry, love isn't necessary. To put the matter in simplest, least elegant, but most understandable terms, Playboy's Playmate of the Month is Miss Superfuck of the Month. I am not. I am I, a real life person, flesh and blood, mind and heart, spirit and soul. I'm God's creature, not Hefner's creation. I've been Playboy's playmate. I'm writing this book now to say who I am, a person. The other personal reason for writing this book might be self-explanatory if the title were The Education of Solveig Mellemborgen. That was the name given to me when I was born 20 years ago on a farm in Norway. It was my name when I came to this land of opportunity 18 years ago and posed nude for Playboy photographers. I took the name Surrey Marshe both to hide my identity and to give people something they could pronounce. Well, I still don't know how to pronounce it, but okay. It is no exercise in self-pity to say that in 2 years in America I've learned a great deal. I've made just about every mistake an 18-year-old girl from Norway can make. I've not always been a nice girl. I feel that I've lost myself somewhere in the last 2 years, or maybe I'd never found myself in the first place. But I'm trying to find myself, and I'm hoping that by setting all this down, when I get to the end, I'll have found Solveig Mellemborgen and what she stands for. I'm sure readers will have no interest in this purely personal motive, but maybe some, including my parents, can reach some understanding of, what is it called? The generation gap. There really are a lot of girls like me. I'm not writing an expose of Hefner or Playboy or anyone connected with the organization. Obviously, some of the information I've set down will be surprising to some and shocking to others, because of both what happened and what did not happen. This is inevitable, because Hefner and Playboy, from its inception, have been busily concocting and living up to an image combining Beau Brummel, Casanova, Rabelais, William Randolph Hearst, Thoreau, and Shirley Temple. Since such an image imposes a few unavoidable difficulties, the realities of Playboy may be both surprising and surprising. Nor am I writing out of malice. My association with Playboy ended rather abruptly. I'm tripping over my words. Nor am I writing out of malice. My association with Playboy ended rather abruptly with my being chucked out like a used contraceptive, but I bear no grudge. Playboy treated me generally fairly and sometimes with kindness. I was paid generously for my services, and I certainly had an adventure and catalogued an array of experiences. Oh my, yes. In my 20th year of life, I'm an older and wiser girl thanks to Playboy. If it all turns out to be a huge mistake, I bear at least as much of the responsibility as Playboy. Or perhaps a society which spawns and nurtures Playboy bears a little responsibility too. I would like it understood that at the outset that I'm trying, as best as I can, to tell it as it was. I know that to some this may be an exercise in sexual titillation. I can visualize some readers leafing through the book to pick out the dirty parts. He or she can go ahead. They'll undoubtedly find some. Telling it as it was means that I must discuss some of the affairs, to use a generous word, that I've had. After all, I can hardly pretend purity. No one would believe it or anything I say. Besides, I just couldn't be that phony. I know that not very many years ago, such admissions by a girl occurred only in fiction. I'm not sure times have really changed or ought to change so much, but I submit that there can be no understanding of girls like me or the problems of the new sexual morality unless the matter is discussed with some frankness. I'm hopeful that at least a few people will understand that my motive is neither self-pity nor self-advertisement. Because I am determined to tell it as it was, I must make this disclaimer. All the information set forth in this book is true. The names of a few have been changed to protect the wicked. Chapter 1. Store Elfdoll. The deluxe January 1967 $1.25 special anniversary issue of Playboy in which I appeared contained, as all January issues do, a feature called the Playmate Review. This is a reprise of all the girls who were Playmates the previous year. It is also a great deal of skin. The entire apparel worn by the dozen girls was one green poor boy sweater and one fuchsia-colored bikini bottom, on 2 different girls, along with one pair of pale green sheer hip huggers and a diaphanous pale pink negligee, also on two different girls. That left Tish Howard tousling her hair before a fireplace, Sue Bernard reclining on a couch, clutching wildflowers, Judy Tyler arising from a bed and clutching wildflowers, Lisa Baker leaning on a canopy bed and clutching a toy Santa Claus, and one girl, who has such an immense bosom she must be considered physically handicapped, sitting on the floor in what had to be an extremely uncomfortable position as she strained to keep her shoulders back. Among the photographs was that of a lovely girl with a voluptuous figure. I don't want to embarrass her, so I'll call her Quaker Mary. Yes, Quaker Mary indeed. It was in December of 1966 that I met Quaker Mary. I had flown to Chicago to participate in a Playboy promotion, which I'll describe later. In the late afternoon, I went to the Playboy offices on East Ohio Street to be briefed by Playboy executives on my promotional chores. Doing the briefing was Anson Mount, who has the title of Public Affairs Manager. He was a bespectacled man in his 40s, nice enough looking and rather typical of all Playboy executives. That is, he dresses and acts as Playboy says the urban, emancipated male should. Also present at the briefing was another man. I honestly don't remember his name, but he impressed me as a young, dirty old man, which is probably why I don't remember his name. Into the office flounced Quaker Mary, carrying her luggage. I had several impressions of her. For one, she and Mount seemed to be old friends. He greeted her enthusiastically. I believe he kissed her. For another, she was, to use a kind word, rather theatrical. Lamenting about what must have been the worst plane flight since Snoopy shot down the Red Baron. Sorry, guys. When she was introduced to me, she said, "Hi there, honey," in such a way that I just knew she wasn't going to buy my matches. It was probably like, "Hi there, honey." My strongest impression was that either the Playboy photographer had wrought a miracle or Quaker Mary had changed considerably. She was tall and thoroughly bosomy, but she obviously had misplaced her calorie counter. Since the photograph was taken, she had put on a significant amount of flab. After a couple of cocktails and a lot of spirited conversation by and about Mary and her activities, Mount announced that we girls had better get dressed for the party. The party was the annual Christmas party to be held at Hefner's mansion. Since I was already dressed for the party, the only other girl was Quaker Mary. Gabbing all the while, "I just don't know what to wear." She decided on a gold mini dress and disappeared into Mount's executive washroom to change. There was a moment of strained silence. I hadn't said anything for quite some time, and I was hardly filled with witty repartee at the moment. Mount and the young, dirty old man seemed to have their minds on other things, for Mount called out, "Hey, Mary, come on out. We want to see you." Why would he want to do that? Maybe he was researching the annual pigskin preview which he writes for the magazine. Suddenly, the washroom door opened. There was Quaker Mary, attired in a straining girdle, which was clearly inadequate to contain the roll of fat which hung over the top. To protect the rest of her modesty, she clutched paper tissues to her breasts. It just had to be a novel use for Kleenex. I have trouble remembering the next events. I was present in the executive office of the public affairs manager of Playboy. I seem to possess all my faculties, but I have only partial recollections of what happened. I know I was in a state of shock. I'm sure I had my eyes closed part of the time. I'm positive I blushed, something I don't often do. "Hey, baby, you sure are something. Would you look at that? Turn sideways, honey. See that? See the size of her boobies compared to her waist? Ever see anything like that? Turn on around, honey, and see how the waist curves into the hips." I didn't see at first was what Mary was doing. I heard only a voice expounding on the anatomical joys of female watching. All I saw was that the carpet needed sweeping. And yet I had to look. I don't know what Mary felt. She looked proud. I guess she had a lot to be proud of. Come on, baby, don't be modest. Let's see ya. Mary hesitated. Maybe she giggled. Maybe I should wear the silver dress. She bent over and fished the dress from her luggage. In the process, the Kleenex fell away. Then she bolted into the John. I begin this book with this episode, for it marked the beginning of the end of my Playboy adventure. I had been a bunny, nearly all of me exposed to club members. I had posed as a playmate, all of me exposed to the world. I'd been nude for so long with photographers that I began to wonder if I might develop calluses. I had various reactions to my experiences, but sitting there while Quaker Mary put on her little strip, doing an extremely private thing for the enlightenment of the public affairs manager of Playboy magazine, I felt, for the first time, dirty. I said to myself, I may even have muttered it aloud, Surrey, what in hell are you doing here? I kept wishing she'd hurry up and get out of the John. I had the strongest impulse to wash my hands. I'd have given anything for a bath. Somehow, as those Kleenex fluttered away to reveal Mary, I too was revealed. I saw myself and what I had done and was doing for the first time, and I didn't like what I realized about myself. Oh, there was no great change. I didn't suddenly swear off nudity like a drunk taking the pledge. I stayed on with Playboy for over a year. After all, Playboy was about all I knew of America. Playboy was my mother, father, friend, counselor, and generous employer. Yet after Mary, let's face it, I was kidding myself, although I tried mightily for a long time to believe otherwise. I don't know Mary very well. I certainly don't know how she happened to become a playmate, yet I doubt if she is an exception to this statement. Playmates are not born, they are made. I realize those words carry at least 3 meanings. A little later, I'll have something to say about the sexual meaning. I realize, too, that at least some playmates are made surgically. I've seen the scars under the breasts. But right now I'm talking about the psychological meaning of made. I believe that undressing and posing for a photographer is an unnatural act for a girl. She either has to be tricked into it or talked into it, either by someone else or by herself, or both. I've heard that hundreds, perhaps thousands of girls write to Playboy every year. Appropriate photographs and clothes, seeking acceptance as playmates. Perhaps, if Playboy says it, it must be so. But they have to be girls who talk themselves into posing nude or were talked into it by assorted boyfriends, husbands, and fathers, girlfriends and mothers, or who are sick with a streak of exhibitionism. I simply believe that woman, like man, has a habit of wearing attire. A significant industry has been developed around that fact. I'd like to tell how I became a playmate. I always felt that the best capsule description of me is my real name. Translated from the Norwegian, Solveig means sunny. I've always been sunny. I even look sunny. I have blonde hair, blue eyes, and fair skin, and like sunshine in Norway, there isn't much of me. I'm 5'2", 98 pounds. My disposition is sunny too. I'm not very complicated and seldom unhappy. I adjust quickly to whatever circumstance I'm in, and I like to please. There isn't much to tell about my life in Norway. It's a very familiar story. I was born November 11th, 1947 in Store Elvdal. Store Elvdal lies considerably to the northeast of Oslo. To an American tourist, it is a picture postcard place with lush pine forests, rugged hills, and the purest air in the world. In summer, there are green meadows and wildflowers and cool lakes to swim in. In winter, which is most of the time, there is snow, so much snow. Sometimes it was so deep I couldn't see out my bedroom window in our 4-room farmhouse. Store Elfdal is layers and layers of clothing and warm fires that make your fingers and toes tingle after you've been outside. And skiing. I learned to ski almost before I walked. Store Elfdal, thus described, sounds wonderful. And it is wonderful, and the nearly forgotten little girl in me likes to return there, but only for a visit. I'm afraid Store Elfdal is a great place to visit, but not to live. My parents recognized this and moved to Oslo when I was 10, keeping the farm as a summer place. I was the youngest of 3 children. When I was born, my father was 49 years old, a house painter and part-time farmer. He is now 70. My mother was 43 when I was born. She is now 64. My brother is 17 years older than I, my sister 4 years older. It is difficult for me to write about my parents. Fortunately, not much needs to be said, for if I've done wrong and gone wrong, and I certainly have disappointed them, it is most definitely not their fault. They are good people and hardworking people, religious, even pious. I was taught right from wrong as they saw it, and right included modesty and chastity. That I have been neither is not their doing. I guess my attitude toward my mother and father is best revealed if I admit I lied to Playboy. In that super special issue of Playboy, I was captioned as the unmelancholy Dane, supposedly born on a farm near Aalborg, Denmark. I've hardly set foot in Denmark. I lied about my native land as well as changed my name in hopes my parents would never learn I had posed nude. I figured that my father, after all, hardly had a lifetime subscription to Playboy, and my mother did not move in social circles likely to have the walls plastered with pinups. But I failed to appreciate the international appeal of skin. My brother is a school teacher in Oslo. One day, one of his students went up to him, spread open the deluxe issue of Playboy, and said, "Isn't that your sister?" He went into a state of shock, fled the classroom immediately, and rushed to my mother. "Do you know what Solveig has done?" My sister wrote me these details along with the reaction of my parents. When I returned to Oslo sometime later, well, it may be said that few funerals have been as quiet as my reception. My father was away working, so the first night my mother asked me to sleep with her. She asked me why I had posed nude. I tried to explain, much as I am here, I guess. It wasn't very satisfactory to mother, and she cried, and I cried. In a couple of days she got over it, which must be a particular faculty of mothers. In the jargon of today, my teenage years in Norway were a grossly familiar case of alienation. I didn't seem to belong to my family. It was as if I were a foster child, or adopted. My parents, even my brother and sister, were so much older than I. The gap between generations seemed widened into a chasm. I had the strongest feeling that I was in the wrong family. I didn't even look like them. They were dark and I was the blondest of blondes. They were of average height and I was tiny. They were plain and I felt pretty. They were somber and I enjoyed laughter and fun. They were defeated and I just knew I could conquer the world. They were scared and careful. I sought adventure and knew no fear. I just didn't fit. Today, older and at least a little wiser, I honor my parents, love them, and respect them. But I cannot escape the notion that somehow God or nature made a terrible mistake. I have no way of knowing if other teenagers feel this way, but to me my feeling of fundamental estrangement from my family was paramount in my life. Any answer to why I became a playmate must begin with that fact. I was in error from the start. I didn't belong. Therefore, I was a person alone, finding my own way, living my own life, seeking, finding, often wishing I'd found something else. There are really only two statements to make out my teenage years in Norway. First, by the standards of Norway and probably anywhere else, I seemed to be a wild kid. I emphasize the seemed because I don't really think I was. I didn't smoke pot or anything else. I had hardly done any more than taste beer and liquor. And I swear that I was under so much pressure from my girl and boyfriends that I felt like the last citadel of virginity left in Oslo. What I did do was work and have fun. After what you Americans would call high school, I, in order, stapled boxes, washed dishes in a cafeteria, picked weeds, worked in a cosmetic shop, and clerked in a hardware store and supermarket. I was not a bad employee, but my real talent was having fun. My idea of fun was to go out with another girl, meet some boys, preferably strangers, dance, laugh, and flirt. Your interesting American term. Oh, and your interesting American term, neck. I was fascinated by pop music, the movies, show business, and foreigners, particularly English-speaking foreigners. A good example was an English rock group that played Norway. I love their music and dancing to it, and I love the singer madly. I spent every available moment with them and him. I even spent the night with him, and kept my status as the last bastion of chastity in Oslo. That may sound hard for some to believe, but a bed can be used for sleeping. That my conduct was difficult for my parents to accept is like saying it snows in Norway. They scolded. They sent the police to find me once. The officers located me, called my father, who found me sitting in a restaurant talking to a girlfriend. My mother even sent me to the doctor to confirm my inviolate status. I passed. I maintained that my conduct was innocent, certainly by comparison with what I have done since. But I know I was a worry to my mother and father. I brought shame to them. If they read this, let it be said I am sorry. The second statement to be made about my teenage years in Norway can be reduced to a single word: America. My fascination with America began when I was 12 and started to go to American movies, read American magazines, and listen to American music. I had an insatiable curiosity about America. Any American tourist found me a willing companion at any time. More than a fascination with America, more than an unquenchable desire to go to America, I had an unshakable conviction that I was going to be a famous American movie star, actress, model, singer, something. My alienation from my parents, my feeling of being a unique person, extraordinary in a world of the ordinary, combined with my enamorment of America to create ambition. By the time I was 16, I knew with certainty that I was going to go to America and be famous. There were several obstacles. I had no idea how to get to America. I had no money, and I certainly had no chance of gaining my parents' permission. That I'm here and not in Norway took a bit of doing. Playboy, in its blurb about its unmelancholy Dane, made it all very easy. I supposedly flew to America on the wages from a brief modeling career. I wish I had, but my immigration was somewhat more complicated. The start of my coming to America was an advertisement by a Swedish employment agency in an Oslo newspaper. It seems there was a need for domestics to work in the United States. I answered the ad. At the same time, I casually mentioned to my mother that I thought I'd like to take a vacation, maybe travel a bit. I certainly said nothing about America. Ordinarily, my mother would have said, "Where you want to go and who are you going with?" This time, her mind must have been on other things. She said, "Yes, dear." When the application form came from the Swedish agency, my hopes were floored. Since I was under 18, I had to get my parents' permission to go to America. I could visualize her reaction if I said, "Hey Mom, I'm going to America to be a domestic servant. Just sign here." And so I covered up most of the application, treated the matter as one of no upper importance, and yawned as I said it. "I need your signature on this application." "What application, dear?" "It's nothing, just a job application. I probably won't get it." She hesitated. I was sure she would ask what job. Instead, she signed. 2 weeks later, I was notified that I had been employed by a rich American family in the suburbs of New York. New York! Oh, how I dreamed of living in New York. My employers were buying my one-way air ticket to New York. I should pick up my ticket at a travel agency. As I started to leave the house to go to the travel agency, my mother said, "Where are you going, Salve?" "To the travel agency to pick up my ticket." "Are you going on a trip?" "Why, yes. Don't you remember you said I could?" "I know, but I didn't think you meant it." "Oh, I meant it. Now I'm going to go." "Where, Salve, where?" "America, Mother." And that's the end of chapter 1.